Hey everyone, it's Katie and Elisha from nowthatwe'reafamily.com, and today we're going to be telling you about our homeschool day in the life.
So just for context, we have 4 children. We have our 5th on the way, praise the Lord. And so I'm constantly looking for ways to navigate homeschooling intentionally while still having a lot of little children in the house and setting up systems so that when we add the complexity of another baby and breastfeeding and all of that, our systems are able to support that kind of distraction or addition, whatever you want to call it. It's just a lot going on. So we have a son that just turned 6. We have a daughter that's turning 5 this next week. And then we have a son that is 3 years old. So those are the 3 children that I'm primarily schooling. I started homeschooling at a very early age because I wasn't the mom that was going to come up with a ton of crafts for my kids to do. If I just taught them their letters and their numbers and memorization of facts or something like that, I felt good about myself and they liked doing it. And I didn't have to use any creativity to come up with it. So something that came pretty early in our life is just kind of like loosely schooling the kiddos. And then as they've gotten older, I found that especially with the boys, burning off that mental energy is very, very helpful.
Yeah, I'm really grateful that I was one of 10 children and we were all homeschooled in my family. I was the 4th born. Katie was the oldest of 11 children and they were all homeschooled. But it's funny, even though Katie and I have that commonality of being homeschooled growing up, our experiences were slightly different. And so I've got different approaches than what Katie has, and I'll have different insights than what Katie has, even though Katie does almost all of the education in our home, literally like 97.6% of the education when it comes to
academic education.
Academic. I still have a lot of input with her when we're talking in the morning and the evening as far as the direction we want to take our children with education, the type of curriculum, the methods we want to be using.
Yes, absolutely. And Elisha and I talked a lot about homeschooling before we ever started doing anything with our kiddos because we both had experiences doing it. I was like, okay, what did you like? What did you not like? Where were the gaps in your education? These were the gaps that I feel like were in my education. And every form of education, there's going to be some kind of gap. And so our job as parents, we felt like was not to make sure that our kids know every single thing they need to know on every subject because that's impossible, but rather that they know how to learn and they have character qualities that are instilled in them so that they have the fortitude to learn. I actually have a homeschool course called Homeschool, the first 3 years. And in there, I walk you through the top, I think it was like probably 20 things that we wrote down together, what we wanted our children to learn. And that's not like a fact, that's not like a subject matter specifically, it's who we want our children to be and how we want education to play a role in that. We want them to be critical thinkers, we want them to be problem solvers, we want them to be confident in their ability to learn new things. It's kind of helpful to come up with that North Star is kind of what we talked about with your spouse, so you know what's important to them and what's important to you. And we're trying to raise whole children that are whole people at the end of the day that are able to go out in the world and be confident and impact society in a healthy way and be able to manage themselves in a healthy way. Sometimes we'll watch these homeschool day in the life videos of a mom who has kids in a little bit of an older grade. Maybe she has 5 kids, but the youngest is in 1st grade or something like that. And she's able to, for 2 or 3 hours, sit down and in a chunk of time school those children straight through and just kind of go from subject to subject. That's not our life or our reality right now. So we kind of have to have a hierarchy of priority to make sure things get done. The number 1 and 2 priorities in our day are outdoor time and then providing the kids with new ideas. If those are happening during the day, then I feel like the day wasn't a wash. It wasn't a waste. And so if we have guests over, or it's a really hard time for me, if the kids are getting outside, they're playing together, there's so many incredible benefits to kids in their cognitive development being outside and then playing together. And then when it comes to presenting our children with new ideas every day for their minds to be stimulated and thinking on, the main way that we do that is through reading.
Yes, and we've shared in numerous videos what our family reading routine is like, what Katie's reading routine is like during the day. And as you'll see in this kind of day in the life video, reading is a heavy part from breakfast all the way through until bedtime. And that's something that Katie and I are very aligned in, is wanting to have that rich kind of literature-based education in the home.
And then when it comes to actual academic subjects, we talked about our hierarchy for those as well. And for us, that's math and logic. I kind of use those interchangeably because our children are young. Sometimes I go back and forth between the two because a lot of early math and a lot of early logic share critical thinking and a lot of the same kind of cognitive abilities. And then the next thing is focusing on our children's reading, like them individually working on reading. Children being able to read for themselves and be able to comprehend for themselves what a text is saying and be able to apply that is going to be very helpful for freeing up my time as they get older. So that's something that we're really prioritizing right now while our children are young. So I love to habit stack, like I've already mentioned, the things that are very important to me with meals, because meals are very important to me. And so they all get done. And so something that we do with breakfast is we kind of have a rotating schedule when it comes to what we do at the breakfast table, because I kind of gathered a few too many things to do. So we kind of alternate between memorizing the children's catechism, recitations. So poetry, we work on poetry at the breakfast table. We work on scripture memory at the breakfast table. We also will read from our breakfast book. So we have a specific chapter book that we're reading there in the morning. Sometimes we will read through the Proverbs or a different little passage of scripture. So this is helpful with really young kiddos because their mouths are full. You have to kind of either not have the best manners and talk with your mouth full or scarf food here and there. So I can't say it's the best for the mother teacher. It's worked really well for us. And also the baby is in their high chair and they can't go anywhere.
The kiddos have been able to fill me in day after day with what they're learning. And you've kind of made it a theme to have the breakfast read. This isn't the rule, but a lot of them have been true stories. And so they've been missionary stories or historical accounts of
they're usually biographies.
Yeah, they're biographical. And so that's been really fun because the kids, of course, you can learn this with fiction too, but they're telling me about geography, even if the book's not about it's not a geographical book. They're telling me about Nate Saint had to learn how to fly so they could go down to, where did he go to? Ecuador? Yeah, go down to Ecuador, and they were telling me all about the village that he was in. And so they were learning about the world while learning about Nate Saint and learning about faith and character and how much faith Nate Saint had. And so I've really been impressed with that, and just how with reading, whether it's true stories or whether it's fiction, how every part of your education and your academia can really be impacted by it.
Like, that is awesome. Like, we just put a chunk of beautiful, good, true, life-giving ideas into our children's mind before they ever leave breakfast. And that is what their little minds are feeding on until the next feast of ideas. And so even if that's the only feast that I give them, that's the one that matters the most to me, is our idea feast at the breakfast table. Right after breakfast, the kiddos have just, been given food for thought. And so it's outdoor time. They have the ability to either go outside on their own, play on the trampoline, come up with something to do while I clean the kitchen, or sometimes we will scamp the kitchen together and then we will all go outdoors together as a family. And that's what we did today. So we all got bundled up. One of the kids got a new scooter, wanted to try it out. So we went on a walk and we went to a park, and a bunch of other little kids were there, and we just played for 2 hours. So while the kids are playing at the park, I used to get really bored. I used to sit on my phone a lot, and now that I don't have a phone, I was just sitting there or like playing with them. But honestly, like they like to engage and play themselves, especially now that they're a little older with the other kids. I usually do 2 things at the park: working out when I'm at the park.
Yeah.
So it's really easy to just like do step ups or do shoulder presses or whatever. That is not tricep dips, not shoulder presses.
I was gonna say, you bring the dumbbells with you?
I just pick up the picnic table. So anyways, there's a lot of different body weight workouts you could do right there. We're usually the only ones at the park in February most of the year. And so there's not like other people to visit with or something like that. Always bring a book. And this is like, if it's snowy and there's snow on the ground, I don't care. I just bring a book, I sit in the kids' stroller and I read. And I'm usually really bundled up, and a lot of people ask where I get my reading time in. And 90% of the reading time I get in is while the children are playing outside. If the kids have just played outside for about an hour, then I call them in, and that's when we do our bookwork time. And so this is when we do math and logic first. We always do math and logic first because that takes like so much brain power. And kids like variety. I think especially math can be lame because it just gets monotonous. And so if a child isn't loving a subject, I really mix it up, using often the same curriculum. What we do with math to mix it up, we use Saxon math, but I will often have the kids do it orally. And I will just orally read the answers and have them do the math mentally in their heads. And so I read kind of funny problems instead of just having them do like 9 + 9, 2 + 3, like that can get really old. So for a few days in a row, I will just say, okay, there are 3 monkeys jumping on the bed, 2 monkeys join them. How many monkeys are on the bed? And they just get a kick out of those problems and love doing it. And it brings some fun back into the math. And then every once in a while, I will have them sit down and do a written version of a lesson. And so that changes it up too. And they're working on writing everything out. So that's one way that we kind of keep math more interested. I noticed my son he started to say he didn't like math. And anytime my kids say they don't like a subject, I'm like, okay, you are too young to not love everything. If you aren't loving it, I'm doing something wrong. So that's when we switched to me reading it orally. And now he'll go through 3 or 4 lessons and be like, can I do another page? Can I do another page? And then with logic, we mix it up 3 different ways. Logic was very, very important to me because I just feel like it's important to both of us. A lot of people don't think. And I wish that I had been challenged more in my thinking, and I want to continue to challenge myself in my thinking.
Yes, same for me.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's just never an area I want to stop growing in. Our oldest, well, actually, our older 2 are like very perceptive. What did Leon say the other day with you being a gentleman?
I don't know how to tell the story very well without telling the whole thing.
Tell the whole thing.
Okay, I was driving home from Bible study with Katie, and I was picking my nose like, the animal that I sometimes act like. And Katie reached over without looking to hold my hand because we oftentimes hold hands when we're driving. But I was trying to get this bugger off my finger before I held her hand because that'd be nasty. I'm not that low of an animal to actually, wipe a bugger on her hand. But I couldn't get it off, and I said, sorry, I can't hold your hand. I just picked my nose, and I still have the booger on my finger. She goes, oh, it's okay. And Leon in the back seat didn't catch the whole, scenario. And he said, why won't Daddy hold your hand, Mommy? And Katie said, well, Daddy's actually being a gentleman because he didn't want to wipe a booger on my hand. And Leon was quiet. And he said, well, I didn't realize gentlemen pick their noses. And I was like, well, that's actually a good thing to realize right there.
But he does that all the time, where he just kind of thinks ahead. So there's there's 3 ways that we work on logic. One of them is I have these little logic games. I printed them off, and they're these little Velcro sticker games. I have those linked in the homeschool course. Another thing that we use is a mini Luke. The kids don't even use this as a part of school. They just use it. They just ask to use it after school, and they get to do it if they're done. It's like a reward.
Nice.
And they will play this forever. So I'll show you the little mini Luke. That's awesome. And then the other thing we do is their logic book. It's from Critical Thinking Co. I just love seeing them so fatigued working out these problems, but having such a fun time doing it. That's kind of what we do for our book work. It's usually only about 30 minutes. Sometimes I will take a child one-on-one. I'll maybe do like 10 minutes with Leon, 10 minutes with Lucy, 10 minutes with Louie. Sometimes I'll do 2-on-1, split the difference, and I don't know. But during this time, our 2-year-old is still in his crib. So he goes into his crib for a quiet time. He gets toys, he gets books, and he sits in there while I play with the other kids or, do school with them. And he loves it. He does not complain. We've actually kind of had to work on this. Alicia's like, maybe we need to start dropping that and just teaching him to behave outside the crib.
Yeah, it's time. It's going to come shortly. Yeah, it's coming soon enough. That's for sure. Especially with baby number 5 coming.
And then my young 3-year-old, when he's not working with me, which is usually for just like 10 minutes on his letters and colors and sounds and stuff, he goes and will get to choose a toy that I have in our higher cabinet. And so that's blocks or mag tiles or train tracks or something that he just doesn't get access to whenever he wants. So once we're done with our little bookwork time, then we go and we all sit down in the living room. Sometimes I get Lawrence up at this stage, and Lawrence sits on his little blanket and will play with toys out with us. That's most often what happens. But we will do a reading time then. So the kids can work on their handicraft, they can knit, they can braid, they could continue to play with the railroad tracks if those are still out quietly. And I usually read something here that's kind of short and...
Twaddle?
No, it's not twaddle. Nonsense never has a place in our school, but I'm excited to use that word in this video. Right now we're doing the Abeka picture stories. I love the way that they explain the Bible. So on top of our reading through the Bible and reading different passages, this is a way that I loved being read stories to, like the history of the Bible. When I was growing up, my mom used these, and they're out of print now. I will show you the ones that I really like. I don't like the ones that come in this like flip card thing, the newer ones. You have to get the ones that are the actual detachable pictures. That's where the kids are really engaged with the pictures. The quality is really good, and they're big, and they're just really fun to read. And I love how they share the gospel every single day that you have a reading. And so it really just reminds the children of who Christ is and what he's done for them, and that the story of the Bible is not just the story of a bunch of people, it's the story of Christ. Some other things we've done during this little short reading time, maybe 15, 20 minutes, is we've read through, broken down, like Lamb's Book of Shakespeare. We've done Greek mythology during this time, and we've also done Aesop's Fables during this time. And then it's outdoor time again. So if we've already gone out as a family in the morning, then they just go out to play by themselves. If they've already gone out to play by themselves, usually I'll go on a walk with them at this time. But it's usually outdoor time until lunch. We come home, we do lunch, and at lunch we do another reading. So unlike breakfast, where there's a ton of things going on with the reading, we just usually read at lunch and visit.
Every once in a while, I'll pop home during lunch to eat with the family. And obviously the kids are always thrilled to see me, but they're also torn because they are always so engaged in whatever the book is that Mama's reading. And so they'll be like, hey daddy. And then Katie will start talking to me, and they're trying to pull her back to the table to finish the book. And it's like this competition. And I get a little, I don't know, I feel a little bit jealous, honestly, sometimes, because all their affection seems towards the book or the character, the protagonist in the book. And I'm like, man, what about this character in your story? Your father. What do you guys think about this guy?
He's our favorite. But it is true. The kids will be like, oh man, daddy's home. Does that mean we can't read? But they like him being home. It's bittersweet. lunch, it's free play. We usually don't have a ton of time. Guys, I'm telling you, this schedule is incredible for kids like not bickering, not fighting, not throwing the toilet paper roll in the toilet, because they're just so engaged. Like their bodies are fatigued, their minds are fatigued in these really healthy ways. And so when they get a chance to just like play, they just play happily by themselves, and it's amazing.
Wow.
So I clean up lunch, and then the last thing that we do is we read together. And this is something, read. I read one-on-one with each of the kids and work on their independent reading. And this is something that is very special. It's like a one-on-one time. Sometimes I read with the kids before breakfast when I feel like I need that 2-hour nap to take a nap, or I need that 2-hour nap to do a work project or something like that. But right now, I donate 1 hour of my 2-hour nap time to reading one-on-one with the kids. My love language is quality time, so I actually feel like it really fills me up to do this with each one of my children. And I started noticing that because I was only focusing on reading for about 15 to 20 minutes with my older 2 children, my middle child started getting very jealous of that attention, but he's not ready for skipping his full nap, and he's also not ready for reading. And so what I started doing is I send the big kids to their rooms, the baby goes down for a nap, and then I go read a book for 15 minutes with my middle child, and then tuck him into bed. He goes to sleep for 1 hour and 45 minutes. I read with the other 2, and then they go back in their rooms for an hour of quiet time. And I get an hour of quiet time too. So that's kind of the last thing on our day. Because reading was so important to me, again, it's stacked with nap time. So I do not miss my children's nap time. If we get home at 2 or 2:30 instead of 1 o'clock, they're still going down for a nap at that time. And so I know that I can count on that time to be able to get reading in with the kids more often than not. And that's what I would encourage you. Whatever your most important subjects are, put those at times where you know you have that during your day. And that's the end. That's the end of our official school day. There's other things we obviously do throughout our day, but we will save that for maybe a full day in the life with a little less emphasis on the schooly parts.
As you've probably noticed, I play a very small role in the practical application of the schooling, but I found I can play a big role in facilitating Katie and giving her an environment and the space to apply this education in our home. There have been different times throughout my schedule and my work routine where I've really interrupted their flow and on a consistent basis. And of course, Katie never wants to tell me to get lost, but over time I started realizing it was a huge blessing to her and to the kiddos when I would give them their space during various times of the day. And so I think learning the flow of your home is really crucial, and being able to communicate that openly with your spouse on when it's a good time to be around, when it's not a good time to be around, and having that be an open dialogue rather than, it doesn't have to be this big controversy, and this big blow up thing. It never became that with us, did it?
No. I don't know, maybe a day or 2. I do feel like overall, Elisha and I are constantly in communication. If I read a book on homeschooling, or I read a book on philosophy of home education or whatever, I bring it to him, we talk about it, we see, okay, does that fit our family style? Does it not fit our family style? And we're still very much a team in this, just like everyone, like everything else, regardless of who is actually doing the work of the actual time that it takes to do it. I think it takes both people being on board. And there are things that Elisha does do, like he teaches our kids their music lessons. Those usually happen in the evenings. And then something else that you've been on board with is our kids' memory songs. So we do have memory songs for things like history, timelines, and science, and prepositions and presidents and stuff like that. And we usually, even though those aren't a part of our regular school day necessarily, we listen to those in the car. Often Elisha's there for those.
Those are awesome, honestly.
Yeah, on road trips or when we're driving up skiing or stuff like that. And so sometimes we'll use those in our home if we're transitioning from a subject, or if I just feel like, okay, our atmosphere needs to change. Let's turn on some music, and why not learn some facts while we're doing it?
We've already mentioned a handful of times that Katie's homeschool course is available, and there's actually a code down below that you can use to get a discount for a homeschool course the first 3 years. So do not miss the opportunity to get that discount. Check it out below.
Yeah, I just hope that it gives you a vision in your homeschooling if you feel like you've maybe lost a vision, or maybe you don't feel like you really have one for your home. And hopefully there's a lot of practical tools in there too that I've learned from teaching my younger siblings for years, tutoring for years, and now finally getting to apply that with my own small children. So we hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did,
give it a thumbs up. Yeah, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe, because we come out with a video every single Thursday of the year. And we don't want you to miss any of them.
All right, we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.